Introduction of the protagonist. Alina stood by the window of her modest apartment, watching the city come to life as the first light of dawn painted the sky in soft hues of pink and gold. The world outside was busy and chaotic, but within the quiet corners of her heart, she carried a calm hope, a belief in love that never wavered, no matter how many storms she had weathered. At 28, Alina had known her fair share of disappointment. Life had taught her that people leave, promises break, and sometimes, the ones you trust the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. Yet somehow she remained unshaken in her belief that true love still existed. Maybe it was the way her parents used to hold hands even after decades of marriage, or the stories she grew up reading, those tales where love always found its way back. Whatever it was, she clung to it, like a lighthouse in the fog. She worked as a freelance illustrator, pouring her emotions into every stroke of color and every curve of a pencil line. Her art was an extension of her soul, bright, gentle, and full of feeling. Her friends often told her she was too trusting, too forgiving. But Alina didn't see that as a weakness. To her, kindness was a strength, and vulnerability a form of courage. Her heart was a soft place, stitched together with empathy and warmth. She believed in seeing the best in people, even when they faltered, even when they didn't deserve it. Alina had been single for a while now, not because she lacked options, but because she was waiting for something real, something that felt like home. She didn't want another temporary chapter. She wanted a story that lasted. She wanted someone who would choose her every day, not just when it was convenient. That morning, as she sipped her coffee and watched the world pass by, she felt something stir within her, a quiet sense that change was coming. Maybe it was just wishful thinking, or maybe it was fate. She didn't know yet, but her heart, ever hopeful, ever open, was ready. Alina wasn't naive. She knew love came with risks. She knew it could hurt. But she also knew that living with a closed heart was worse. So she chose to stay open, even if it meant breaking again. Because that's who she was. A woman who gave love without limits. A woman who believed that one day someone would see her heart for the treasure it truly was. What she didn't know was that the path ahead would test every bit of that belief. That the man who would soon enter her life would teach her the hardest lesson of all, that not everyone you give your heart to deserves it. And yet, even in that pain, her strength would shine. Enter the love interest. The coffee shop on 5th Street was one of Alina's favorite places. A quiet, cozy corner of the world where she often sketched in her journal or got lost in a good book. That day, the scent of fresh espresso and baked pastries filled the air, and a light rain tapped rhythmically on the windows. It was the kind of day that made the world slow down, made everything feel a little softer. Alina sat at her usual spot by the window, pencil in hand, sketching the face of a character that had lingered in her mind all week. She was so immersed in her art that she didn't notice the man who had just walked in, the sound of the door's chime barely registering. Zane, tall, sharp-featured, with stormy eyes that held secrets and a smile that could melt away the world's weight. He carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who didn't need to demand attention. He simply had it. He glanced around the shop, looking for a seat, and when his gaze landed on Alina, it lingered for just a second too long. Their eyes met. Just a moment, but enough to shift something. The cafe was full, save for the empty seat across from her. "Mind if I sit here?" he asked, his voice smooth and warm, like velvet brushed with mystery. Alina hesitated only for a heartbeat, then smiled. "Go ahead." And that was how it started. What followed felt like something out of a dream. Zane was charming in a way that never felt forced. He asked questions that made her feel seen, really seen. He listened with intent, responded with wit, and carried a kindness in his tone that made her wonder if fate had finally stopped playing games with her heart. Over the next few weeks, their paths kept crossing, first at the cafe, then at the art exhibit she visited on a whim, and later, as if by magic, in the bookstore near her apartment. Each meeting seemed coincidental, but perfectly timed. It felt like destiny was gently nudging them closer. Zayn was everything she'd always hoped for in a partner. He was supportive of her art, often asking to see her sketches and praising her creativity. He remembered small things, her favorite flower, the way she took her coffee, the playlist she always listened to while drawing. He made her laugh effortlessly and always seemed to know what to say when she felt unsure of herself. But beyond the charm, there was a layer of mystery to him. He spoke little of his past, deflecting personal questions with an easy smile. He was open, yet guarded, present, but hard to truly reach. Alina sensed it, but told herself not to rush. Everyone had walls. All she knew was that when Zayn looked at her, she felt special, chosen, wanted. And after so long of waiting, she was ready to believe. What she didn't realize was that Zayn wasn't just a chapter in her story. He was the twist. Blossoming romance. From the moment Zayn entered her life, everything began to move faster, like a film suddenly shifted into a more vivid, more beautiful reel. Days that were once quiet and predictable became filled with laughter, shared glances, and whispered promises that tasted like forever. Zayn had a way of making every moment feel cinematic. He surprised Alina with spontaneous adventures, sunrise drives to hidden viewpoints, midnight walks under city lights, and once, an impromptu rooftop dinner under fairy lights he'd strung up himself. "Just because," he said when she asked why. "You deserve magic." She fell for the way he spoke to her like she was the only person in the world. For the texts he sent when she couldn't sleep. "Close your eyes, love. The stars are watching over you." For the way he held her when she was anxious, grounding her with nothing but his presence. He paid attention. He remembered that she hated crowded places, so he planned quiet, thoughtful dates. He knew she cried at animated movies and always brought tissues. He even learned her favorite brush strokes in her art, and once brought her a custom sketchbook engraved with her initials and a tiny heart. In his arms, she found a comfort she hadn't known she was missing. He asked her about her dreams, her childhood, her fears, and he listened, really listened, like her words were precious secrets. He shared too, just enough to build a sense of intimacy. He spoke of losing his mother young, of chasing stability, of never really feeling at home anywhere, until her. Alina began to draw him, first in quiet sketches while he slept, then full illustrations filled with emotion. In her eyes, he wasn't just a man. He was the muse she never knew she needed. They fell into a rhythm, breakfast together on weekends, long phone calls that lasted until the sky lightened, lazy Sundays spent tangled in blankets and soft laughter. She let him in fully, piece by piece, until her world was shaped around him. Her friends noticed the change. "You're glowing," her best friend said. "I've never seen you this happy." And she was. Zayn made her feel chosen, cherished, adored. She stopped questioning her worth because he made her feel like the answer was obvious. One night, after a perfect evening filled with music, dancing in their living room, and whispered, "I love yous," Alina looked at him and thought, "This is it. This is what love is supposed to feel like." She didn't notice the moments he pulled away, the phone calls he'd ignore, the vague explanations for late nights. Love had wrapped her so tightly in warmth, she barely saw the shadows creeping in. Because when someone gives you everything you ever dreamed of, your heart forgets to ask if it's real. And Zayn, he was giving her a love story, but hidden beneath it was a lie waiting to be told. Subtle red flags. At first, it was nothing, just a missed call here and there, a reply that came an hour later instead of instantly. Alina told herself it was normal. Zayn had a busy life, a demanding job, and sometimes he just needed space. After all, he always came back with a sweet apology, a thoughtful gesture, or an excuse that made sense, mostly. But the perfect rhythm they had once shared began to shift. One evening, they'd planned a quiet dinner at her place. She'd spent hours cooking his favorite meal, even lit candles, but Zayn didn't show. His phone rang and rang until it finally went to voicemail. No message, no text, just silence. He appeared the next morning, flowers in hand and a sheepish grin on his face. Work emergency, he said, kissing her forehead. I didn't want to worry you. Alina hesitated, but the warmth in his eyes dissolved her doubt. Then came the stories that didn't quite add up. He said he was visiting an old friend from college, but forgot the friend's name when she asked again later. He claimed he lost his wallet, but the next day had a brand new watch on his wrist. When she teased him about it, he just laughed. You're too observant, he said. That's dangerous. Sometimes he'd vanish emotionally, too. She'd share something vulnerable, a story from her childhood or a worry gnawing at her heart, and instead of responding with his usual attentiveness, he'd deflect. Don't think too much, love, he'd say. You always live in your head. And yet, in the very next breath, he'd send her a love note, bring her coffee, whisper, I can't lose you. It was a confusing dance, 1 step back, 2 steps forward. Alina began to feel it, a quiet tug in her chest, a sense that something wasn't right. But every time she started to question it, Zane would reel her back in with a look, a touch, or a carefully timed, I love you. Her friends noticed the change in her. You seem tired, one of them said gently. Is everything okay with Zane? Alina forced a smile. He's just been stressed. It's nothing. Because how could she explain it? The inconsistencies were small. The lies, if they were lies, were clever. Nothing outright wrong. Nothing she could point to and say, here, this is where he broke my trust. And so she let it go. Because love, real love, was about patience, about understanding, about not walking away the second things got complicated. Besides, hadn't he always made her feel like she was his world? Alina believed in the story they were writing together. She believed that love had shadows sometimes, but that didn't mean the light wasn't real. She didn't know she was already losing herself in the pages. And Zane? He was already writing a very different ending. Warning from a friend. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon when Maya showed up unannounced. Alina's best friend since childhood, Maya had always been the kind of person who saw through the noise, sharp, loyal, and fiercely protective. She carried 2 cups of coffee and a serious look in her eyes. Alina greeted her with a hug, surprised but happy. To what do I owe the honor? Maya gave her a small smile. Just missed you, and we haven't really talked in weeks. They settled into the living room, soft jazz playing in the background, the scent of vanilla candles lingering in the air. For a few minutes, they chatted about random things, work, a movie they both wanted to see, the weather turning colder. Then Maya leaned in. Alina, can I ask you something? And please don't get upset. Alina blinked, heart tightening slightly. Of course. It's about Zane. There it was, that name. So powerful, so sacred in Alina's heart. But the way Maya said it was laced with concern, not admiration. What about him? Maya hesitated, choosing her words carefully. I don't want to overstep, but something feels off. I've seen how happy you've been, and I want that for you. I really do. But lately, you've changed. You're distracted, tired, and I've seen the way you hesitate before talking about him, like you're always trying to say the right thing. Alina sighed, looking away. I just think, Maya continued gently, some things don't add up. You mentioned he disappeared for a few days with no explanation, that he cancels last minute, that he doesn't really open up about his life. Doesn't that bother you even a little? Alina frowned, her fingers tightening around her coffee cup. He's just dealing with a lot. He's private, that's all. He tells me things when he's ready. Maya nodded slowly. Maybe. But doesn't love mean letting someone in? Trusting them with the messy stuff too? I just don't want to see you give your whole heart to someone who might not be doing the same. I know him, Maya, Alina replied, voice soft but firm. He's not perfect, but he's good to me. He cares. I'm sure he does, Maya said, though her expression didn't fully agree. Just be careful, okay? Love shouldn't leave you constantly questioning yourself. Alina didn't respond right away. She knew Maya came from a place of love, but still, it hurt. It felt like someone throwing shade on something beautiful she was still trying to believe in. "I appreciate you looking out for me," she finally said, forcing a smile. "Really, but I need to figure this out on my own." Maya reached out, squeezing her hand. "I'll always be here, no matter what." And with that, the subject was dropped, for now. But her words lingered long after she left. That night, as Alina lay in bed beside Zane's empty spot, she couldn't shake the quiet echo in her mind. Love shouldn't leave you questioning. Deepening trust versus hidden secrets. Alina had always believed that love meant transparency, that when you let someone into your life, your fears, your dreams, and your past, it was a sign of true connection. And so, piece by piece, she handed Zane everything. She told him about her childhood insecurities, the nights she cried herself to sleep after her first heartbreak, and the time she almost gave up on art entirely. She showed him the sketchbook she never shared with anyone, the one filled with her rawest emotions and unfiltered pain. He flipped through it gently, his fingers pausing on a page she had drawn after her father's funeral. "You feel deeply," he said, eyes soft. "That's rare." And in moments like that, Alina felt like she had found something real. She started planning a future with him in the quiet corners of her mind, where they'd travel, the studio she wanted to build, what their life might look like. She never said it all out loud, she didn't want to scare him, but her heart was already walking that path. Meanwhile, Zane gave her just enough to keep her close. A few carefully crafted stories from his past, small vulnerabilities that seemed genuine, and perfectly timed compliments that made her feel seen. But there were walls, subtle but solid. He never invited her to his apartment. "It's a mess," he'd laugh, brushing it off. "You wouldn't survive the chaos." She offered to help organize it. He deflected. Always. She had never met his friends. He claimed he didn't have many, that he'd cut people off, that they didn't matter anymore. Once, when he stepped away to take a phone call, she overheard just a few words in a hushed tone. "Not now. I told you. I'm with someone." She pretended not to hear. Another time, she found a bracelet in his car, a delicate, feminine piece that definitely wasn't hers. He said it belonged to his cousin. "She was in town last week," he explained. "You'd love her if you met her." But Alina never did meet her. Still, she told herself to trust. He had never raised his voice. He looked at her like she was everything. And love, real love, required patience, right? What she didn't know was that while she gave him her full heart, he was playing roles, each one crafted for a different audience, another woman, another version of himself, another story altogether. To Alina, he was the man who remembered her favorite tea and wrote notes on sticky tabs for her sketchbook. But somewhere else, Zane was someone entirely different. The version she loved was carefully curated, polished to perfection. And behind that smile, behind those "I love yous," lay truths that would shatter everything she thought was real. He admired her openness. He even envied it. But he never matched it, because while she was building a life with him, he was just playing a part. The big reveal. It was supposed to be a quiet evening. Rain tapped gently on the windows, and Alina had made her signature lemon pasta, the one Zane always said reminded him of their first real date. He was running late again, but she didn't mind. She'd gotten used to waiting. His jacket was draped over the back of the chair where he'd left it the night before. As she moved to hang it up, something heavy shifted in the pocket. A phone, not his usual one. It was older, worn, with a cracked corner. Her heart skipped. Zane wasn't the type to carry around junk. A chill ran through her fingers as she pulled it out. The screen was unlocked. No password, almost like it was begging to be found. She stared at it for a long time, her thumb hovering over the messages icon. Her instinct screamed at her to put it back. But something deeper, something tired of the weight of unanswered questions, pushed her forward. The first thing she saw was a name she didn't recognize, Lena. The messages were recent, frequent, intimate. Can't wait to see you again tonight. Miss waking up next to you. She doesn't suspect anything. Alina blinked, her mouth suddenly dry. She scrolled. Photo attachments. A video of Zane laughing in someone else's kitchen. A selfie with his arms wrapped tightly around a woman who wasn't her. She dropped the phone. Her stomach twisted, and the room suddenly felt too quiet, too cold. This wasn't just a misstep. This was betrayal with precision. He hadn't been working late. He hadn't been overwhelmed. He hadn't been protecting her from his messy life. He'd been living another one. The front door opened just then. Zane, soaked from the rain, carrying takeout and wearing that same easy smile. "Hey, babe," he said, kicking off his shoes. "I figured we could—" He stopped mid-sentence when he saw her standing there, pale, still, the second phone trembling in her hands. "What's this?" Her voice cracked on the words. His eyes darted from the phone to her face, just a flicker of hesitation, but enough. The mask slipped. He stepped forward, setting the food down carefully. "Alina, listen, it's not what you think. Don't lie." Her voice was stronger now. "Not again." For a moment he didn't say anything. Then he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." She almost laughed. "Go this far? You said you loved me." "I do," he said too quickly. "But Lena, it started before you. I didn't know how to end it." Alina stared at him, her chest hollow. The man she had trusted, the man she had imagined a life with, stood before her now as a stranger. The charm, the stories, the romance, it was all theater. And she had been the audience, or maybe just another role on his stage. The tears didn't come right away, only silence, because the heartbreak hadn't hit yet. She had given him her heart, and he had filled it with lies, confrontation, and breakdown. The air in the room was thick, so heavy it felt like even the silence had weight. Zane stood a few feet away, arms crossed now, posture shifting. The mask of the caring, vulnerable lover was gone, replaced by something colder, something real. Alina's hands trembled, but her voice didn't. "How long?" He exhaled sharply, as if the performance had finally tired him out. "Does it matter?" Her heart sank, not just from the words, but from the way he said them, detached, almost bored. "I gave you everything," she whispered, voice cracking. "And you—" "What? You used me? Lied to me while playing house?" He smirked. "You were convenient, sweet, trusting. I didn't have to try too hard." The words hit like a slap. Alina's breath caught in her throat. She felt like the room was spinning, her vision blurring with unshed tears, but she refused to let them fall. Not yet. "I loved you," she said. "I believed in you." Zane shrugged. "That's on you." Those 4 words shattered what little was left. Not an ounce of remorse, no apology, no attempt to lie his way out. Just the casual cruelty of a man who had never truly cared. "You're unbelievable," she said, choking back the lump in her throat. "I shared everything with you. My dreams, my pain, my art. Do you even understand what that meant?" "I told you," he said coolly. "You feel too much. It's exhausting." Her knees went weak, but she steadied herself against the table. "Why me, Zane?" "Why not just be honest?" He gave a dry laugh. "Because honesty doesn't get you what you want. Pretending does." For a moment, all Alina could do was stare. The man before her was a stranger, calculated, unfeeling, and unapologetic. Everything he'd said, every gesture he'd made, now felt like part of a twisted script written only to manipulate her. "You don't deserve love," she said softly, bitterly. "You don't even know what it is." Zane stepped closer, but she backed away. "Don't," she warned. He paused, then scoffed. "You'll get over it. People like you always do. You'll cry, paint something sad, and then fall for the next guy who tells you you're special." Alina's eyes burned, but something inside her shifted. Not broken. Awake. She grabbed his keys from the counter and tossed them at him. "Get out." He looked surprised, then almost amused. You sure? Now. He stared at her for a moment longer, like he was waiting for her to collapse. But she didn't. She stood tall, shattered but strong, refusing to let him see her fall apart. With a careless shrug, he turned and left, the door clicking shut behind him. And then the tears came, silent, fierce, but not weak, because this wasn't the end of her story. It was just the end of his role in it. Heartbreak and healing. The days that followed felt like moving through fog. Alina woke to silence. No good morning texts, no arms around her, no artificial comfort. Just her and the echoes of everything she thought was love. The pain was sharp at first, like shattered glass lodged in her chest, cutting with every memory. His laugh, his promises, the way he used to say her name like it meant something. But beneath the devastation, something else began to stir. A quiet strength, a whisper. You are still here. She stopped waiting for closure from someone who was never truly open. There were no more explanations to seek, no need to reread the messages or scroll through pictures looking for signs she missed. She knew the truth now, raw, cruel, and freeing. She blocked his number, deleted the photos, unfollowed, and every small step away from him felt like a stitch closing a wound. Alina threw herself into her art, not to numb the pain, but to feel it, to transform it. Her sketchbook, once full of soft love and warmth, became a canvas of bold lines, broken edges, and fire. She painted grief and rage, vulnerability and power. The gallery she'd been too afraid to pitch before? She sent in a proposal, with every piece telling her story. She spent more time with Maya, who never once said, "I told you so." Instead, she simply listened, held her hand when Alina cried, and reminded her gently, "You're not what he did to you." Alina took long walks, started journaling again, cooked meals for herself, not to impress someone else, but to nourish her own body. She learned to sit with silence without fearing it, learned that loneliness was not the same as being alone. Some nights still hurt, some memories still surfaced. Healing wasn't a straight line, it spiraled, but each wave of sadness came with less weight than the last. She began to look in the mirror and recognize herself again, not the woman who had been fooled, but the one who dared to love completely, even in a world full of masks. That wasn't weakness, that was courage. One morning, weeks later, she stood in the middle of her studio, paint on her hands, sun pouring through the windows, and she felt it, a flicker of peace. Not because she had moved on, but because she had come back to herself. She had survived a man who wore love like a costume and used trust like a weapon, and still she chose softness. Still she chose herself. The version of her that had loved him was gone, but in her place stood a woman reborn, not perfect, not healed entirely, but real, whole, awake. Alina had given him her heart, and he had shattered it, but she was the one who rebuilt it, stronger, wiser, and entirely her own. Empowered ending months passed, but they no longer felt like a slow crawl. They were moments of rediscovery, of shaping something new out of the pieces she had picked up after the storm. Alina had found her rhythm again. Her art had flourished, turning into an unexpected success. Her gallery show, once a distant dream, had opened to a packed room. People marveled at the raw emotion, the unapologetic vulnerability woven through each piece. They didn't just see a woman in pain. They saw a woman who had risen from it, and for the first time in a long time, Alina realized this was her true expression, her voice, her power. The phone calls from friends and family became more frequent, each one filled with genuine pride and encouragement. Maya, ever the pillar, grinned from ear to ear when Alina shared the news of her latest success. "I always knew you had it in you," she'd say, wrapping her arms around Alina in a tight hug. But it wasn't just about the art or the accolades. It was about the internal shift, the sense of wholeness she now carried. Alina had learned how to stand on her own, not out of necessity, but out of choice. She stopped waiting for validation from anyone else, especially not from someone who had never deserved it. She started dating again, not because she needed someone to complete her, but because she now recognized what true love could be: mutual respect, honesty, and shared growth. She wasn't afraid of her vulnerability anymore. She wore it like armor, knowing that in the right relationship, it would be treasured, not exploited. But more than anything, Alina had learned to love herself, without apology. She wasn't the woman who had believed in fairy tales. She was the woman who had learned that real love began with a deep, unshakable affection for herself. She didn't need to fix herself because she wasn't broken. She was whole. One crisp autumn morning, Alina stood in her studio, staring at a new piece she'd been working on. It was a portrait of her, a woman, arms open, surrounded by fiery reds and calming blues, a reflection of strength and peace intertwined. She smiled to herself. This wasn't just an image of herself in the past. It was the woman she had become. She stepped back and admired her work. "This is me," she whispered softly. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was recovering from something lost. She was living her truth. She was walking into the future with a heart full of lessons, scars that had transformed into badges of courage, and a mind that no longer clung to the lies of her past. She had rebuilt herself from the inside out. Her heart wasn't broken anymore. It was stronger, fiercer, and open to the possibilities ahead. And as she stood there, alone, but not lonely, she knew she was enough. She always had been. Her story was no longer defined by betrayal. It was defined by her strength to rise, again and again, no matter what life threw at her. Alina was no longer the woman who had fallen for someone's lies. She was the woman who had found herself, and that was the most powerful transformation of all.